The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now. Welcome and thank you for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored tonight. A Houston man is accused of abusing his girlfriend for months. Kenneth Wright was arrested Friday and has been given a $100,000 bond. Police say he held his girlfriend captive for at least 6 months inside of his apartment right here in Houston. Now, Wright is also accused of using physical force to keep her from leaving. He's accused of punching her in the face, keeping the front door locked, and nailing all the windows shut, as well as covering them. Our next guest has important advice for others who are experiencing a living hell. And joining us on The Factor Uncensored, we have with us Matilda Saragosa, who is in Cleveland, Ohio tonight. Usually she's in studio with us. Matilda, we have sat down before and talked about this very same issue. It's like deja vu. Another woman found held hostage, kidnapped in her apartment, or at least in her boyfriend's apartment, for 6 months. Now, the boyfriend has been arrested. He's 41-year-old Kenneth Leon Wright, and he is being held on $100,000 bond and charged with kidnapping and family violence. What in the hell does this happen, especially when the victim has family members right here in the city of Houston? I do want to shout out her mom, who got suspicious and called the cops and demanded that they go check on her daughter. But how does this happen?
I mean, first we have to understand that domestic violence happens in so many different forms: physical, emotional, mental, and even spiritual. And just recognizing some of the red flags. Of course, there was isolation, limiting the access to family members to cell phones. Control. There's definitely had to been some control, telling her what she was going to do and when she could leave out of the home. Withholding information. He was withholding information from that family so that way he can assure that he was going to keep this particular person, in hostage or in bondage. Um, I always tell everybody, let's recognize the 3 R's. Recognize the situation, which is what mom did. She
Yeah,
was able
yeah,
to
she took
recognize.
action.
She was able to recognize, take action, and she was able to respond. And so that was a good thing for the mother, and it's so sad that these experiences are happening. And like you just stated multiple times, we've had this sit down conversation over and over again. So to the ladies out there, I just want to just simply encourage you, know who you're dating, get to know a person before you actually move them in, or you even think to even spend that much or that amount of time with them. It's very important that we recognize these individuals and get to know who they are before these types of situations start to occur.
When you see these individuals and you see there is a sign that this mofo might be a little off,
Mhm.
what should you do immediately, Matilda?
Well, I mean, okay, if you're in a situation and then it starts to escalate immediately, I always, ask them, call 911. If you can't get nothing else out, just keep repeating your name and your address, your name and your address, your name and your address. That way dispatch can say there's something going on. Let me send out a unit to find out what's happening. We have the Houston Area Women's Center. We have a national hotline that could be achieved. And we always want to encourage the domestic violence victims to have a safety plan. Find out where you're going where you're going. Pack a bag. Figure out how we're going to keep the kids safe. Who do I call? Keep these important numbers close to you so that way we can kind of intervene before we wind up in these types of situations.
And when you have an issue of pride or you feel embarrassed to do it, how do you get over that and admit to your family what they saw with this guy is exactly right and be able to swallow your pride and get the hell out of that relationship? How do you gain that, Matilda, for those who may feel embarrassed? I don't want to tell anybody. They
Well,
told me this guy was off.
Well, as a victim of domestic violence, I myself experienced that same shame and guilt. And I think that even in conversations, or even like when he was able to bring her around the family, or I was brought around the family, I would try to give telltale signs that something was wrong. I didn't want to actually look at anybody in the face. So that way, maybe they could see that something was off with Matilda. And that way, maybe they would initiate the conversation and it would make it easier for me to reveal what was happening. But again, all that all that shame and that guilt can be dealt with with some therapy and some sessions with individual counselors. But what cannot be resolved or we not cannot recoup from is actual death. And these things can lead to death.
Now, we want to make it clear that according to investigators or family members as well, they said he would bring her around in some instances, not a lot, but just to show face so that they know she's with him and I guess she's alive. But then she goes back to this apartment where all of the windows are blacked out and they're nailed down according to the sister who went into that house. That's a real problem.
Right. And again, we going back to the signs. It was a form of control because he was taking her when he chose to take her. He was limiting access to the family members. So again, there's these signs that are, and withholding information to where they lived. That's a sign. Like if everything is well, why would it be a problem if I was to come out and visit or even just know where you're living, just in case there's an emergency that should occur? So just pay attention to the signs. And again, if you have that happening to you, there's plenty of resources out there that are willing to help. If you can find somebody that you can confide in and kind of give them a heads up of this is what's happening, I'm not quite sure to what extent, have a conversation.
Absolutely. And once again, we want to shout out her mother and her family who
Absolutely.
realized something was going on. They found a way to figure out where Mr. Wright lived, and they sent the police there and they got involved. They just didn't remain silent. They got active and took care of this issue. For those who are having problems, Matilda, what are some of the organizations, really quick to wrap up, that they should reach out for, try to find some help?
Well, depending on the immediate danger, I would say there's always 911. We can call 911. There's the Houston Area Women's Center. We do have domestic violence emergency shelters. And of course, there's support groups in local areas to offer services to these individuals.